thanks a lot for coming in.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Something about this community appeals to you?
This is a wonderful place to live.
For Kelowna Now, this is Kent Mulgat.
Paul Hergott, lawyer from West Kelowna, now with offices on this side of the lake as well. And the subject of this one is distracted driving. This is a subject that Paul loves to talk about, and you've been a real advocate on this, so I know you've got lots to say. Let's start with, we've got laws that say we can't have the cell phone in our hand when we're driving, but it's all okay if we just put it on Bluetooth. Problem solved, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what our political leadership has led us to believe, is that hands-free driving is perfectly safe. Clearly it's safe because we've chosen to make the handheld version illegal. Not only have we made it illegal, this was back in the beginning of 2010, but since it became illegal, we've jacked up the penalties. So now it's not just a ticket, but it's
really illegal.
It's really illegal. And we've done nothing to even whisper or suggest that hands-free cell phone use while driving is a problem.
But hang on a minute here. People have been talking in their cars to the other passengers since vehicles were invented. I mean, I guess they're quieter now. It's easier to have more conversations than in the very beginning. But yeah, they're so quiet. You chit-chat all day long, and that's never been a problem, or has it? What do you say?
What's the difference between that and hands-free cell phone use?
Talking to the passenger while I drive seems, how is it different if I'm talking to someone somewhere else on my Bluetooth?
Right, so there's a couple of points that I think are really, really important. One point is that anything that distracts your brain from the task at hand is a problem. And having a discussion with your passenger, depending on the level of your brain being distracted, can be a problem. I have a rule with myself and my legal team. If we're on the way to the courthouse, we don't talk about the file on the way to the courthouse, because more than once I'd stop at that intersection at the highway and Ellis Street. I'd pull in on a green, and the light would go yellow, go red, and my legal team would have to say, "Hey, Paul, you got to clear the intersection because the light's red," because my brain was on this other topic. But when you have a passenger, there are some important benefits that you have. You have the benefit that I just referred to.
That is?
I'm sitting there, my brain elsewhere.
Okay, so we're
and my co-passenger says, "The light's red, clear the intersection."
So we're driving along, you're my passenger, and I'm looking at you, and then even your eyes, I suppose. You might, and I could connect to where you're now looking. So there's a benefit to having another alert.
That can be, but more likely, imagine you're driving along and you're getting close to a stop sign, and you're not slowing.
They're going to say something.
What's your wife going to do?
Yeah.
Right? Backseat driver from hell? I'm not saying she is, but
she'll start making noises like,
yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
You have that benefit.
And that's a significant benefit. The distraction of your brain engaged in a discussion is probably similar to being on a cell phone. Similar. There's a couple of differences, perhaps, that your brain, you're actually thinking outside the vehicle. But I don't know.
Okay, so now, if you're having a Bluetooth conversation with somebody walking down Fifth Avenue in New York,
right,
you're kind of mentally transporting yourself there. You're really out of the place. So you're further distracted from your driving. Is that possibly part of it?
I think perhaps. No, I'm not.
I'm looking for answers to that, because I know what you're going to tell me is that statistically, studies are indicating that those Bluetooth conversations are, in fact, no safer than actually having the phone in your hand. Is that what the studies are showing us?
Yeah, in fact it is, and it's really, I find it, I shouldn't use words like devastating and atrocious and horrific. I shouldn't use those words because it suggests that my emotions are getting in the way of my discussion. Yeah. There was a discussion paper that the British Columbia government put together looking at all the studies that had been going on and conducted about cell phone use while driving. They reviewed all the studies, and they did that, and they put together this discussion paper in 2009. And that discussion paper set out the conclusion of the scientific studies, and that's that handheld hands-free, no difference. And the paper actually projected and warned against banning one of them and not the other, because if you ban the one, you might lead people into a false sense of security with the hands-free version. So the government put out this discussion paper, which isn't, I can still access it online, but it's not on one of their web pages. And then January 1, 2010, they passed the law that made only handheld cell phone use illegal.
So even in 2009, has there been any additional study since then that underlines it or contradicts it?
There is not one study that's been conducted that says that handheld is any way different from hands-free, as far as I understand, and I've researched this stuff.
It is counterintuitive, because you would think that having the physical distraction and actually the visual barrier of holding that phone up would be more dangerous.
Yeah, and it's difficult,
I guess. And having to look down and maybe dial it or something, it does seem like there's some added danger there, but you're telling me that by the time you add up the numbers...
I'm not the scientist on it, but here's an interesting piece of science that will really rock your world. Voice to text, which is perfectly legal in this province, is actually more dangerous than looking down and physically texting. It's been scientifically established that that's more dangerous because our brains are so distracted when you're trying to do voice to text. Your phone repeats you back whatever it is, and you get it wrong, and you've got a backspace, and you're so focused on that activity versus knowing that you're doing something that's dangerous.
And then you're doing all sorts of nervous corrections to make sure you don't crash during this dangerous procedure.
That's right. Whereas voice to text, which is perfectly legal,
I just hope nobody hears what you just said and goes back to texting on their phone. But wow, I mean, some of these things that might seem safer aren't.
Absolutely, and I'm a bit of I've pounded my drum about this. Before the law changed in 2009, I wrote a column on this topic saying this is ridiculous, and I've written about it a number of times. And recently, within the last few months, I heard a call-in show on CBC, and it was one of these trivia things. And the question was asked, what is it called, that place where they train RCMP officers in Regina? And there was a caller that called in, and the caller was clearly, you could tell from the background noise, on the road.
They may have been a passenger.
May have been, but Chris Walker clarified and said, "Are you driving?" And the driver said, "Yes, but I'm on Bluetooth." And so the discussion continued. The driver was an RCMP officer, because of course an RCMP officer would know that the name of the facility was depot or whatever they call it. Right. And that RCMP officer was having a casual discussion with someone on the radio when they should have had their attention driving. So what I did is I wrote a column about that issue, and I called out CBC to change their policies to not allow,
and the RCMP,
as well as the RCMP. I haven't done anything.
Have you written any letters to the BC authorities?
I've actually been lobbying the provincial government for quite some time. Well, when
what letters?
When our emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when our premier was in my riding, I sent a column where I actually threatened to sue the provincial government for implementing this ridiculous law. The government changed, and so my threat was no longer of some.
So have you renewed this with the new government yet? Any correspondence on this topic?
I haven't with the new government. I'm now working with the current incumbent in my riding, Ben Stewart, and hoping to get some response from him. Right. But I'm a busy lawyer, and this stuff is important to me.
But they make cars now specially equipped with this stuff. I mean, you would be really up against it to get people to give that all up.
Well, what happened when the law changed? What happened when the law changed is that people like you, I'm sure, a safety-conscious driver, you want it to be safe. So what did you do? You put a whole bunch of money, not a whole bunch of money probably, but you put some money into a Bluetooth device, into something that was hands-free. And
I'm thinking I was making myself safer,
yes,
and statistically speaking, I'm not.
You were actually making yourself more dangerous because hands-free, think about this for a second, is actually more dangerous than handheld if you don't realize how dangerous it is. At least if you're handheld
You
driving.
kind of know you're being bad, and so you're more alert
You're
to that.
being more
Whereas
alert.
you're in this, okay, wow.
It's
Interesting
really a
stuff.
problem.
I think we've spent the 10 minutes, probably more.
Well, thank
Thanks,
you. Thanks, Ken.
Paul Hergott, attorney at law. And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.